Please pray with me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us this morning. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing to you. Amen. It's funny because I'm talking about an M. Night Shyamalan movie, but not that one. At Ministers Week, this week I was in Fort Worth for Ministers Week at Bride Community School, and as I was hanging out with some of my friends who I hadn't seen in a while, we were reminiscing about all the times we'd had in Fort Worth together through undergrad and grad school. And we also talked about when General Assembly of the Disciples Church was in Fort Worth in 2007. And I remember that one very, very well because Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the 7th book in the Harry Potter series, came out at midnight on Friday night when General Assembly started on Saturday. And I just knew that if I didn't get it right at midnight and read it before General Assembly started, somebody else would and would spoil it. And so I was at Barnes & Noble at midnight, and I picked up my copy of Harry Potter 7 and read it from about 12:01 until I finished at about 9:30 a.m. on Saturday before I went to General Assembly. And of course I was the only one who did so, and the rest of the week everyone was reading their book during downtime. And so I was having to keep from spoiling it for anyone else. This week at Ministers Week, one of the lecturers talked about an M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village. And he prefaced his talk saying, spoiler alert, even though that movie came out, 1990 something probably, maybe early 2000s, but it's been a while. But what really struck me is he brought that up after he had completely spoiled Apollo 13, like 5 minutes earlier, with no mention of spoiler alert. And I was like, if you're gonna give a spoiler alert, why do you do it on the bad movie and not on the good one? Because The Village is terrible. It's not a good film. Whereas Apollo 13 is a great movie. I remember when I saw The Village, I saw it in theaters, and I think it was about 5 minutes into the movie when I figured out what the big twist was. I'm not going to spoil The Village for you, even though it's not really a good movie, and you can probably figure it out about 5 minutes in. But I figured it out immediately, and then part of that is because usually when movies want to have some big surprise, it doesn't really come out of nowhere. There's something in literary circles known as foreshadowing. And a lot of times the clues are there. So when the surprise happens, you can look back and see, oh yeah, they've actually been setting up for this the whole time. So like in our image here, The Sixth Sense, when the big surprise happens at the end, you look back. Has everybody seen The Sixth Sense? Because I'm going to spoil that one. I just now decided. It's not in my thing, but I'm spoiling it. Bruce Willis is dead the whole time. And the little boy can see him and talk to him, and it's supposedly his therapist, but actually, Bruce Willis is just one of the many ghosts that Haley Joel Osment's character sees through the whole movie. And then, when you realize that, you look back, and Bruce Willis doesn't interact with anyone else in the whole movie. No one else directly interacts with him. So he'll inject into a conversation sometimes, but nobody responds back. So he thinks he's interacting with other people, but no one directly interacts with him. And so you catch that after you realize, but it's there the whole time. And if you think, wait, it's really weird, Bruce Willis isn't actually, I bet he's actually dead. You can figure it out beforehand. So you can kind of spoil yourself sometimes. I think it happens to me a lot. I remember I saw a movie one time where, again, it was pretty early in, and I turned to my friend I was watching the movie with, and I was like, I think this, and this. And then at the very end of the movie, it showed up. She's like, how did you know that? And I was like, well, because, all these things. I think it's, having been a film major, it's my own fault, because sometimes I dig too deeply into what's going on. And so I'm looking kind of at why would they make that decision? Oh, okay, well, it would make sense if they did that. And I'm sort of working ahead of what the movie is actually showing us. Well, the Bible, and especially today's lectionary text, is foreshadowing heavily. And if we dig deep, like we're going to, we risk spoiling ourselves. But that's okay. I think it's okay. So let's look at the King's chapter first. Naaman, we are told, was a great man. He was a general for the king of Aram. He was a mighty warrior. He was in high favor with his master. He was also a leper. Now, it's important, real quick, that what we call leprosy today and what the Bible calls leprosy are actually different things. As many of you know, leprosy that we have today is incurable. What was called leprosy then wasn't always incurable. In fact, sometimes it could be that you got some fungus on your clothes. You would have leprosy. It's basically just anything that kind of messes with your skin or your clothes got that overarching term. And so when we get somebody who has leprosy in the Bible, it's not what we think of today. It could be any number of things. But Naaman had some skin condition that was bothering him and keeping him from being able to fulfill all his duties. Now, he had a captured slave from Israel, his wife's servant, and she told him that there was a prophet in Israel who could cure him. So Naaman decides to go see this prophet, nearly causing an international incident in the process. Because you see, the king of Aram is kind of a big man on campus. And I'm sure there was some tension between lowly Israel and big Aram. And we have the king of Aram saying, I'm sending you one of my most important people for you to cure him. Well, that puts the king of Israel in a bit of a no-win situation. Because he's pretty certain he's not going to be able to cure him. So what happens when he doesn't? Well, probably war. It doesn't look good. So when he's tearing at his clothes, he's genuinely certain that he's facing his country's demise in this letter, saying, I'm sending to you my servant Naaman to cure him. But Elisha, Israel's prophet, heard of this dilemma and says, send the general to me. So Naaman goes to Elisha, but instead of Elisha coming out to greet him, Elisha just sends a message with a messenger. And then the message from the messenger is to wash in the Jordan 7 times. Now, this really angers Naaman, because he comes to see a great prophet, and the prophet doesn't even come outside. He just sends out some lowly servant to give him the message. I mean, Naaman shows up with his chariots and his horses, right? It's like a procession. Naaman is a great man, and he wants everybody to know that. And this lowly prophet just sends out a messenger. And then, to make it worse, he tells him to wash in the dirty Jordan. Doesn't this guy know where the clean water is? It's Damascus. It's not here in Israel. The Jordan is filthy. If I just wanted to wash myself off, I could have done that at home, where the water's way better. But then, one of his servants makes a great point. Look, if he had come out and told you to do something really crazy and difficult, you would have done it, right? This is easy. Why not just do it? We're already here. And so he does, and it works. But none of that hasn't went the way that Naaman expected it to. Because God's power doesn't manifest itself in earthly ways, the way that we expect. Naaman had an idea because Naaman was a great man. He was a powerful man, so he knows how power works. He knows how these things are supposed to go. And none of it went the way that he expected it to. In fact, from the very beginning, he only heard about the prophet through a slave. Not only just a slave, but a slave in his wife's household. It wasn't even one of his slaves. And then when he goes to the king has literally no idea what to do with him. He has to go somewhere else. And then when he gets to the supposed powerful man of God, who gives him the message? A servant. God's power is unexpected, and it works through those that we would not expect. And often through those who we probably see as less than or beneath us. But God's power is also miraculous. Even when you're washing in the dirty Jordan, God's power can work. Now, Naaman wasn't from Israel, so he wasn't probably in as bad a position with the disease that he had, whatever it was, called leprosy, as somebody in Israel would be. And part of the reason that we know that leprosy in the Bible is not leprosy today is because, well, they fully expected that sometimes it could be cured. There were things to do if you were cured of it. And we hear in our Mark text when Jesus tells the person he cures to go to the temple and show himself, he's telling him to do those things that allow you to be reintegrated into society. And why would you have those rules if no one was ever cured of the disease? So, in our Mark text, we have someone suffering from some disease called leprosy. And now in Israel, this makes you ritually unclean. This means that you have to quit your job. You have to leave your family. You have to leave city limits. Now, often the lepers are just right outside the city because literally the only way they can live is alms. So you want to be where near people are. But the thing is, nobody wants to get close to them because if you touch someone who's unclean, you're also unclean. So basically, there are these group of people who are, for all intents and purposes to society, dead. Just outside the walls. We see a few things in our Mark text that tell us a little bit through Jesus about God and God's power. First of all, I think it probably said up there Jesus felt pity in the text. That's a bad translation. The word is angry. But a lot of translators feel that that's a weird word there, and so they translate it to pity. But I don't think it is. In fact, I think it makes a lot of sense because I can see getting angry at this situation. I can see getting angry at first just for the suffering that this man has with his disease. Just on the basis of the disease itself. And I think Jesus is angry at that. But more, I think angry works because I think Jesus is angry at what happens to this person because of their disease. Jesus is angry that they are ostracized. Jesus is angry that they are cast out. Jesus is angry that this person no longer is able to live their life through no fault of their own. That would make me angry. So Jesus gets angry at the suffering this man has received. And I think if there's something that makes God angry, it's the suffering that we put upon others ourselves. The suffering that people go through because of other people's actions. And then, unlike Elisha, who sends out a messenger to the leper, Jesus touches the leper himself. Jesus touches the leper, which means Jesus risks contamination. Jesus risks the same uncleanliness on himself that is on the man. So God's power is greater than contamination. It's greater than fear. Despite the risk, despite the stigma, Jesus is right there in it with the man. Because if you want to find God, I think that's the best place to look, right in the midst of the suffering. Those are the people that God is with. And then Jesus has him go through the protocol, the proper protocol to rejoin society. So what does that mean has just happened? A man, basically dead, has been resurrected, has arisen from his knees where he asks for Jesus to heal him, arises to new life. Sounds a little familiar. God's power through Jesus has overcome death. And really, that's what this story is about. So here we are, a few days from the start of Lent. And the end of the story is spoiled for us already. God's power, unexpected though it may be, unlikely sources through which it might come, is undeniable. And even overcomes the strictest of taboos. It overcomes the most unthinkable and the most absolute of all situations, even death. Spoiler alert, when Lent comes to an end and we sit together on Good Friday with our hopes breathing their last on a cross, the story's not over. Spoiler alert, there will be a resurrection. Spoiler alert, there will be Easter morning, and we are an Easter people. Spoiler alert, death is not the end. If it seems like there is no hope, if it seems like nothing good can come from this moment, then we know that God is not yet done acting. Because God will be victorious even over death. Spoiler alert, that's who God is. That's who we worship. And as we, an Easter people, celebrate that as good news.